Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to this session. I'm pretty surprised to see that many attendees in a session which starts with Microsoft. So just a quick tour around the room. Who is using Windows? Quite many people. So I will be talking about Microsoft Azure today. We'll be talking about mainly open source and non-Microsoft technology. You will be seeing quite a lot of stuff around Java, open source, and many tools we are supporting on the platform. I will start by introducing myself a little bit. I'm Christophe. I'm working in Microsoft Belgium as a cloud solution architect. I'm a big Azure fan. I've been working with it full-time for the past 4 years. I'm proud father of Lucas. Today he became 1 month old, so it's pretty new. And you might be surprised, even though I work for Microsoft today, that when I was preparing this talk, and I took a booze, a small tea in the evening when I was preparing my slides, that I even was drinking from a Java Polis cup. So I'm a former Java Polis attendee. I was a Java developer for 6 to 7 years, combining both .NET and Java development. So it was a little bit rusty when I was preparing my demos. So bear with me when I do some demos. Let's pray to the demo gods if everything goes well. Just a small question. I will be using Eclipse. Is that still a good IDE today to be using? Who is using Eclipse? All right, that's great. Who is using IntelliJ? Okay, I see people using both. Okay, great. Are there people using Visual Studio? Okay, because at the end of the talk I have some announcements which we made yesterday evening, which might be interesting for you around .NET and open source, and you'll see about it. So, first of all, who has been working or using Azure already? I see 1, 2. All right, great. Are there people who are playing games in the room, like Titanfall? Anyone? Did you know that Titanfall is running on Azure? All right, I will be briefly explaining. Did anybody watch the Olympics? The NBC Sports live streaming? Did you know that it was running on Azure? So, in the end, you might have already experienced the power of the cloud and Azure before. So, the Olympics, streaming to web and mobile. So, around 100 million viewers who were looking at it at the same time, running on top of Azure Media Services. And during the US and Canada hockey match, 2.1 million concurrent HD viewers were streamed by Azure Media Services. So it's a great sample of something out in the public that you might have already used before. Second thing is Titanfall. I think it's probably one of the first games in the world who is doing a full server-side AI and who's using the full power of cloud to be able to host all those user sessions. So you remember when I was playing multiplayer games in the past, it was always the fact who is going to host the server and who's going to be our host. And then the guy with the most lag was complaining that the others were cheating. So that's the idea behind Titanfall, that they're hosting over 100,000 servers in the cloud. And basically you have a pool of around 300,000 servers able to host user sessions so that any cheating, any benefit of lag is basically out of the question in that sense. It might be the future for next games coming, that the cloud might be there in a cost-efficient way to serve these types of scenarios. Now, before I forget, I have some nice gadgets to hand out. We have Azure Passes and 10 of these guys. This is basically a battery to charge your phone or your tablet, and it can be used as an external speaker as well, through USB, and we're giving them away at our Microsoft booth, 10 of them, to the 10 people who tweet using Devoxx and Azure, and the 10 best tweets can come at around 4:30 at our booth during the break and pick up these nice things. So, to show you how, first of all, start a little bit with what Azure is, because there were only 2 people in the room who already have used it or have experienced it. To show you a little bit the statistics about our cloud. Basically, currently we have around 300 services running, both compute, networking, and infrastructure. And if you see on the left the map, that's the Azure footprint today. We're currently available in 19 regions around the globe. So we have data centers in Europe, in the US, in China, in Asia. We have recently announced 2 new ones in Australia even. So we have 19. Now, if you look, we are currently having around 1.2 million databases in Azure. And what I find most cool is that we have over 30 trillion objects stored in our storage system. I heard this morning that in the meanwhile it became 35, so it changes basically every day. So to give you an idea, 19 data centers, 19 regions around the world, that's pretty big, and you have all that power available at your fingertips, and I will be showing today how you can leverage for open source and Java development the power of our platform. So of course, knowing that everybody is looking at cloud these days, there are a few of key characteristics where every cloud needs to be different. And basically that's to be always up and always on. So that's where customers today are demanding applications which are always available. We're used to using Facebook and Twitter, which are basically never down. So in terms of application development and server hosting, we need to make sure that we can deliver high service level agreements to our customers. And basically, whenever you deploy cloud, whatever cloud it is, it's those 4 scenarios on the right that you will be encountering, that you need to solve. The on and off scenario where people have sometimes need of capacity, but most of the time they're not. Growing fast, certainly for startups. I heard that the edition of Devoxx this year is about startups. So for them it's important to start with a platform to host software as a service and to be able to scale on demand and to be able to cope with many customers. So that's growing fast. And of course the unpredictable and predictable bursting are the 2 scenarios which we are seeing every day. I remember when Michael Jackson died, every newspaper around the globe was having some performance issues because everybody wanted to read that article. That's unpredictable bursting. Now, of course, with all this cloud today, what is important is that we can focus on scalability and that we can optimize our resources for when they are needed. And that's where we see that if we are buying hardware capacity today, we might have too many tomorrow, but we might have too few in a couple of weeks. And that's where we can leverage the cloud to try to follow that elasticity and that curve of usage as much as possible. Now, when we look at Azure internally into the data center, we have buildings on each side in each of those 19 regions, and you have to imagine that as being one football field in size. So it's pretty big. It's one building in a data center. Now, just to give an idea how big it is, it can fit 2 jumbo jets inside. So that's pretty big. Now, we have on each side 16 of those buildings hosting around 600,000 servers per region. So if you have 19 regions, 600,000 servers, you know that the capacity is there if you need it to scale and to be high available. Now, looking at the last 12 months, cloud and certainly Azure has been evolving at an insane pace. So it's almost impossible to keep up with all the new additions coming every week. And if you look at what has been added in the past 12 months, it's basically everything you see on the slide, ranging from server backup to a deal we made with Docker, IBM support, Oracle support, full Java support on Azure. So we have been working quite a lot in extending our platform, not only for Microsoft technology, but also to others. To give you an idea that currently in Azure, around 1/5 of the servers running are non-Microsoft based, so they're Linux machines. So that's why Microsoft is investing heavily in open source and all these other technologies, because we also believe that it's very important for our customers and also for the community able to use this cloud as their solution, as their platform. Now, how do we differentiate? We're, according to Gartner, a leader in the four things. So cloud infrastructure as a service, public cloud storage, and server virtualization. And of course, where we differentiate is our hyperscale, which we saw with 600,000 servers per building on our sites. Enterprise grade, but we try to differentiate as much as possible on the hybrid approach. Certainly for enterprise customers today, not a lot of them are ready to go full public. So they are asking, okay, what should we do? We have some servers in our own data center, or we have invested quite a lot in hardware, which we don't want to throw away. How can we link it to the cloud, and how can we take benefit of something like the public cloud? And then a hybrid approach where you have a hybrid network between on-premise and the cloud is what you are looking for. And that can be both application-based or it can be infrastructure-based. It basically doesn't matter, but the hybrid approach is where Microsoft has already experienced for the past 30 years, and that's where we try to differentiate compared to the competitors. Now, what I wanted to talk about today is not about Azure and Microsoft and how we can run .NET and Microsoft-based applications into the cloud, but I wanted to talk about the investments Microsoft is currently making to be an open platform for other technologies. And I've listed here quite some logos of things we are currently supporting in Azure. And you will probably notice that we have support for Eclipse, we're running Drupal, we have WordPress in our gallery. A lot of the services running in Azure can be directly linked to GitHub, Bitbucket, or a local Git repository to publish your applications directly from your machine into the cloud. We have support for many Linux distributions, from CentOS, SUSE. We have support for Oracle, SAP, Citrix. We have quite a lot of support for many other things than just Microsoft technology. And I will be picking out quite a lot of those today, and we'll try to show you as much as possible in a demo instead of just going through some slides. Now, before we go into the details per component, I wanted to talk a little bit about the building blocks. So underneath we have the cloud platform, our cloud infrastructure, and then of course we have the two flavors, infrastructure as a service and platform as a service, where we say, okay, we're going to host virtual machines, virtual networks, the hybrid connections, that's infrastructure as a service, both on Windows virtual machines and Linux virtual machines. And then of course we have the platform as a service, which I will also show you today, which is around web development, which is about data, which is about mobile services you can use to build mobile applications, which we will go into more detail later. And then on top of that, we have, of course, our programming languages and our tools, which are, of course, the full Microsoft stack using Visual Studio with Team Foundation Server, but of course also full support for Git, Java, Node.js, PHP, and Python. Now, you would be surprised, but the Microsoft development teams for Azure are almost fully working with GitHub today for their source code development, so they're not even using TFS. And with the announcement that I will make in the end around .NET becoming open source, you will see that also that code is being available in GitHub instead of our own Team Foundation server. Now, looking at Azure and developers, first of all, we need to see, okay, what's the benefit of you as a developer? Who is a developer, by the way? Okay, most of you. So what is the benefit? You can, of course, keep using Visual Studio if you're a Windows user, but we have full support for Eclipse as well. Now, we also have a plugin for IntelliJ, which is still in development, but it offers already some features. And then from operating system, you have the choice in Windows or Linux. Basically, anything that runs on a hypervisor can run in Azure. It depends, basically, should you run it in terms of supportability, but if it runs on-premise, it probably also runs in the cloud. And then looking at data, we offer SQL Server, of course, as a service and on infrastructure, and we offer Oracle, Oracle DB, Oracle WebLogic, and one logo which I still missed, which I have to add, is IBM support, so we're supporting WebSphere, DB2, and MQ on Azure as well. So you have plenty of choice in that. And then, of course, looking at languages, we said most of that already. It's basically .NET, PHP, Java, Node.js running into our platform as a service. And then for websites, we have a gallery, which I will show you, where you can easily deploy Drupal, WordPress, Joomla-based content management systems. And then for mobile, you might have heard recently that with Office 365, Microsoft has released also clients for the full Office suite on Android and iOS. And if we look at mobile development, which I will be talking more in depth later, we'll see that everything from notifications to backend systems can be deployed in Azure, but are fully compatible. All the libraries for Java, Node.js, Android, iOS are fully compatible and fully available for you to start developing applications on top of the Azure platform. Now, that was the developer side. Are there also more infrastructure guys in the room? Only a few, right? So if we look at what they have in Azure, is basically a full support of Chef and Puppet. So if you would like to do the full configuration of your server infrastructure in an automated way, you can use Puppet or Chef. The middle is PowerShell, so it's basically the PowerShell desired state configuration that you can apply. We have our identity solution, which basically offers you single sign-on on top of your corporate identity store, Active Directory, which might be a Windows-based Active Directory, but also others. And then we have Azure Active Directory offering you federated identity based on claims-based identity towards Facebook and other providers. Now, for operations, it's also important to look at monitoring and auto-scaling. So I will be showing that today as well. So it's important to always keep an eye on what is my service doing, what is the status, how is it performing. So that's monitoring. And of course, since we try to achieve that ultimate goal of reaching the optimal capacity in our servers, auto-scaling is of course what we need, so that the platform itself is going to react on peaks and is going to make sure that the platform scales when it needs to. Now, the first thing which I would like to show you today is a little bit infrastructure as a service. How you can start building virtual machines, because for developers even it's handy to have your development environment set up in a few clicks and to be able to start deploying your websites on Apache or MySQL. So I will be showing that with Linux on Azure. And then I will show you how easy it is to start deploying Oracle on Azure. So an important note here is that Oracle on Azure comes in two flavors. You have license portability, where you bring your own license. You have already a contract with Oracle and you have a license, so you are able to deploy that same license into an Azure virtual machine. Or you can pay it per hour. So it's basically Oracle as a service, and if you shut down the machine, you start paying for it. So it's both for WebLogic and Oracle DB, and full Java support. And then I will be showing a small demo of the VM Depot, which is owned by the Microsoft OpenTech guys. They are all the guys behind the open source and the libraries and such. So they have a VM Depot which contains all the virtual machine images which you can start from, and I will be showing you what flavor you can find over there and how fast it is to start a new virtual machine. So I'm going to head out to a demo now. If you have any question or whatever, you can always interrupt me and ask so. Now, our journey always starts with the Azure portal. So to make it a little bit more confusing, we have two portals. We have the new portal and we have the new portal. This is the, let's call it the old portal. And we have the new portal. We'll be using both in this demo, because some things are only available in the new one and others are not, so it depends which scenario you would like to cover. So the first thing I would like to do is deploy a new Linux virtual machine to show you how fast and how easy it is. So in the portal, you see that I have on the left all the services which Azure has. So it's quite a lot at the moment. It's around 40. So we have quite a big list. In every node you have extra options and extra services which you can enable. But the one which we will be looking at now is virtual machines. So I click virtual machines. You see I have already quite a lot of them for another demo that I was doing. But I can easily say, okay, create a new one from gallery. And then I get the choice out of all the images foreseen by Microsoft and by our partners, which are in this list, allowing you to quickly bootstrap a new machine. So we have, of course, Windows Server, we have SQL Server images, we have BizTalk Server, but we have a machine with Windows and Java, with Windows and WebLogic, Windows and Oracle DB, but of course we have also Oracle Linux in here. Where is it? In the back, Oracle Linux with WebLogic and database. We have OpenLogic, Oracle Linux, We have even Barracuda images, CoreOS, and the list is being extended as we speak. So it's a continuous, ongoing thing to get this list updated with the latest stuff. So, for instance, if I take this Ubuntu, and I do next, basically I can choose which release date I would like to deploy. So important is that the moment I deploy a virtual machine, I'm stuck to that version, and I need to patch and update it myself. So I just take the latest version. So you see that all these versions are available here. I give my virtual machine a name. I can choose between two tiers, standard and basic, and I can choose the size of my machine, ranging from an A0, which is basically a shared core, and only 700 megabytes of memory, up to a machine which has 112 gigabytes of memory and 16 cores. And 2 weeks ago, we announced the G series, which they called the Godzilla series, which are going up to 32 CPUs and 480 gigabytes of memory. So that's really for the big machines, certainly in terms of big data and stuff like that. It's why we added those. Now, the difference between A and D is only that A is the standard machine and D has solid-state drives underneath it, if you want faster I/O. Now I will be taking A1, which is the standard one. I can specify a username and upload my SSH key to connect to this machine. I don't like security, so I will unflag this, and I will go provide a password. And I will just use a password to access this machine instead of using a key. So my username will be Azure user. I do next, and on the next part, you see that it asks you to define a cloud service. And basically, if you're working with Azure, you're always coming back to cloud services, and you have to see it basically as your entry into the load balancer in the data center. So what you get for free if you're hosting virtual machines is load balancing, firewall rules, DDoS filtering, traffic shaping. It's all out of the box. You don't have to pay for it. You get it for free. I will show you what you can configure in the load balancer as well. So I'm going to use a new name. By default, it uses the virtual machine name as my name to the outside world. So I will be able to contact this machine using devoxubuntu.cloudapp.net. I can choose which region I would like to deploy in, ranging from Asia to Europe and US. I will take North Europe, which is Dublin. And then it's going to ask me, where do you would like to store this virtual machine? Basically, it needs some storage. It needs to store this data, this operating system disk somewhere. And that's basically the storage system within Azure. So you can say automatically generate a storage account. And then you see you have an availability set, and that's where, if you're building a cluster, where it becomes interesting. So imagine that you have a solution where you need to deploy a load balancer. You would like to make sure that inside a cluster that there's always at least one machine alive. And that the platform itself is also knowing that when these machines are available, that you need at least one to be successful and one to be available online. And it will also make sure that if you deploy an availability set in a cluster, that the machines will be hosted on different hardware, behind different switches. It will be a complete separate physical deployment. And that's to guarantee that in case there is a hardware failure into the data center, that it will not impact the availability of your machine. And then, as I said, we have a load balancer, reverse proxy, firewall, depending how you position it. And you can define the endpoints yourself, which you would like to open to the outside world. So for this machine, I would like to do SSH on port 22. Not the best ID, if you would like to get it secured, but for demo, it's fine. And I'm going to open port 80. Because I will deploy Apache onto this Ubuntu machine. So to show you that you can expose any port you would like to. Now, for each of these ports, in a later step, I can show you as well, you'll be able to define some ACLs to restrict traffic back and forth from these ports. So I'll go next. And by default, the VM agent will be installed on this machine. This allows remote administration of the machine, not so important. But you see that we have a list of extensions, which I will be talking about more. And one of the extensions we currently support is Chef, so that you can use Knife and Chef to fully manage this server environment and to start deploying the services you would like to. If I check this guy, I have to provide my client RB file, my validation key, and I can immediately specify what recipe I would like to run from Chef. So imagine that I'm deploying Ubuntu with Redis on top of it. I provide my Chef config files, and I immediately can deploy the Redis recipe on top of my server. So that's the power of Chef. And now that's all I have to do. This machine is now being created, so it's not a pre-prepared image that is being given to me. It's a fully new deployment, so it's going to find somewhere in the data center a location where there's still room for the size I requested. It's going to create a new virtual machine, install Ubuntu from scratch, go to the complete installation cycle, configure the load balancer, configure these reverse proxy ports which I have entered. It's going to fully define the networking stack, make sure it's available, and report back as running to the cloud platform. And on that moment, I know that my machine is ready and I can SSH into it. So that's basically the full thing which happens behind the scenes. And you will see that depending on what type of machine, it will take around 3, 4, 5 minutes for this machine to be online. So while we wait, we'll go into the VM depot, because of course you saw that the list which we could choose from was a little bit limited. You can imagine that you are looking for more images, more templates to start from. So if you go to images, you see browse VM depot. And if we browse VM depot, you see that all the same guys we had before are in this list as well. But this will allow us to immediately deploy an image prepared by our partners containing both the operating system, the full configuration, and even applications on top of it. So we have Alfresco here, we have Apache CouchDB, Solar for full text searching, we have some WordPress guys, and if we look into it, we basically should be able to find Drupal as well. So if we take, for instance, Drupal 8, and it will basically ask the same thing. So this guy is only available in the East US. It will create a new storage account again. I have to provide it with a name. All right. And basically what's now doing is going to copy that image prepared into my storage account, which is basically a virtual hard disk. It's copying it, and it will allow me to create a new virtual machine from this image in the next step. So you see that's currently retrieving status, and after that's done, it will start copying that VHD into my account. Now, that's all internal into the data center, so that does mean that I don't have to upload this virtual hard disk from my machine, from my own network into the cloud. It's basically all there for me. So that's pretty handy. Now, we'll let this run. I'll go back to my slides, because I think that deploying virtual machines is not the killer scenario for cloud. I strongly believe that. I think that the differentiator in cloud today is platform as a service, because hosting virtual machines with a few clicks, it does not add that much benefit. While it will make life more easy and have you bootstrap many scenarios, it still remains a virtual machine in the cloud. While we as developers, we would like to focus on applications. We don't care about infrastructure below. Certainly for development and test, we just want to write an application, a web-based application, web services, or a mobile application, and we want to focus on the application instead of the infrastructure beneath it. We want our cloud vendor to take care of the infrastructure below and manage that for us and make sure that our application is available as soon as possible. And that's where platform as a service come into play. So we have already briefly touched cloud services. I will go into more detail using Eclipse. We have websites. We'll demo that as well. And if there is still time left, and I see there will be, I will briefly touch the others. Like we see mobile services, our backend service compatible with Android, iOS, and Windows. Notification hubs, a single service, notification as a service, which is able to deliver notifications to Kindle, to Google, to Android, basically, and to iOS and Windows, all from a single service, so that you as a developer basically don't need to care what your developer or your user is using. You just send your notification to a service, and it's up to the service to figure out what type of device the user is using and how it needs to translate that message to be able to send it to the correct device in the correct format. That's notification hubs. And then two last things, which I will be showing you as well, is basically HD Insight, which is Hadoop. A full Hadoop environment which you can bootstrap and which you can use to run MapReduce on top of terabytes of data, and then Redis as a service, which I will be deploying and show you what you can do with it and how you can interact with it. So start with cloud services. First go to Eclipse, and basically when you install Eclipse, you can install the MS OpenText plugin. It's a plugin developed by Microsoft, by the team who is responsible for also this VM depot. And it's a plugin into Eclipse which adds Azure capabilities into this IDE. The same plugin exists for IntelliJ. So I just go to File, New, and I select the dynamic web project to keep it simple. I give it a name, call it Devoxx. I will run it on Apache, Tomcat, locally installed on my machine. Leave the rest like this. This is fine. Okay, the web directory will be web content. That's fine. So it generated my application. It should run locally. And if I add in my web content directory a new file, I can specify a GSP file, and I call it index.gsp. And I will put some code in there. So that's basically my first step. Imagine this is your web application. You have been working on it for a long time, and now you would like to deploy it easily from Eclipse to the cloud, to Azure. Basically, you do right-click on your project. You see the Azure context menu. Can everybody see it in the back, or is it too small? Is it fine? Okay, thank you. You see that there is a menu package for Azure. I click it, and it will ask me a name, how it will be called in the cloud. And then I need to configure some stuff. So I need to specify which JDK I would like to use, which version. So I'm currently using version 8, I think. So I have to specify which server I would like to use locally, and I have to specify which server I would like it to be in the cloud. So I'm going to use my local, sorry, I'm running Windows, so I wasn't going to change that for today. So that's it. And I'm specifying the devoxx.war file, which will be deployed inside this Tomcat container for me. So basically, I do next. And I have some other options which I can specify. The load balancer by default is stateless. It will apply a round-robin strategy without knowing where the user in the session came from. So for many applications, it's not that easy, because that means that you have to fully build a stateless web application. So you cannot store anything on the server. But if you would like to, you can select to have session affinity so that every session goes back to the same machine. You can configure caching if you would like to, and you can even enable remote debugging. So imagine that this application is being deployed, and in a development environment I would like to debug live on this web application. I just use the cloud as my web server, and I can step through this code locally on my Eclipse without me having to run Tomcat locally on my machine. So basically I do finish, and you see that it added an extra project which contains a certificate. It contains some configuration values, and the moment I would like to, I right-click on this project, I say Azure, deploy to Azure Cloud. And if you do this the first time, it will ask you for an Azure subscription, which is basically your account into Azure. At our booth, we have around 5,000 passes available, so for everybody, a pass which you can use to try it for free for 30 days. And you see that the moment you have linked it, it shows you in which storage account would you like to use. So exactly the same storage account as the one I created will now be used for uploading my package into it, and that will be my deployment source for the automated deployment. I have to name my service, so I will call it Devoxx Pass. I have to choose my location, so I will use North Europe again. And I have to specify in which slot I would like to deploy it, staging or production. So I will show you that if you deploy to staging, you can easily swap to production and back and forth. So that's great for scenarios where you would like to test your deployment before going to production. You deploy it to staging, and the moment you tested it and you're confident that that version is really the right one, you just swap it. And on DNS level, internally in the data center, basically they're swapping two DNS records, and instantly the staging becomes production and vice versa. And imagine you made an error, you can easily switch back. so that you get free. And then, of course, I can say enable remote access. Imagine that I still want to remote desktop into this machine. I can configure my credentials to do so. And now I say publish. And now Eclipse is going to package this. He's going to make a package, an Azure package, and he's going to upload it to Azure Storage, and he's going to initiate deployment of this package and this Tomcat container using my application into Azure. So we'll leave this running. In the meanwhile, we go back to our demo, and we see whether our Ubuntu machine is ready. So if we drill into this machine, we see that currently the status is running. So we should be able to SSH into this machine. So taking PuTTY, on port 22, I can log in as Azure user with my password, and I'm fully able to configure this Linux machine like I would like to. So if I would like to install Apache, I can easily do so. And I'm currently just installing that Linux machine and managing it like it is any Linux machine out there. So now I will leave this going. And when we go to the new portal, it's something we announced and released not so long ago. If you go to Browse and you go to Virtual Machines, you will see this virtual machine listed as well. And if you're into Docker, I heard that it's quite hot these days, that you can easily go to Extensions, click it, and add, and you see that Docker is officially supported into this, currently only on Ubuntu machines. You click Docker, you specify your keys, your certificate, your keys, and basically that machine has support for Docker so that you can start deploying containers and start containerizing your applications on top of this virtual machine, if you would like to. So that's all from, that's again only from the new portal. You cannot do that from the older portal. So in the meanwhile, our Apache has been deployed, so I should be able, and you see my machine is up and running. It's the Apache 2, which I just deployed on top of this machine. And currently, it's a single machine in a cluster. But if I would like to, and I deploy a second one the same way, I can easily load balance them and make sure that they're high available for me. So that's Ubuntu. Now going back to those images which I was talking about. So images, you see that the Drupal image has been copied to my account. It says pending registration. I register it into my account. I give it the name, the default one, doesn't matter. It's now registering it, which means enabling it for me to create new virtual machines on top of. And after this registration is complete, I will be able to create a new virtual machine using this image as my source. Let's give it some time. In the meanwhile, let's look back at what Eclipse is doing. You see that currently it's in progress. So you see it's deploying to Azure at 80%. So Eclipse is currently doing all the hard work for me. In the meanwhile, this image is available. So if I go to instances and I create a new virtual machine from gallery, you saw that there was a node here available, my images. And basically, that's the place where even you can upload your own images. Imagine that you have a template machine on-premise which you would like to reuse in the cloud. Just upload that template into Azure, make it available as an image, and allow your users or your developers to choose from your own images and immediately start deploying with the full configuration of your standards in place. So if I use this Drupal image, I say next, you see that basically the wizard remains the same. Of course, no security, we don't need that. And we go further. It will ask you to create a new cloud service. It will ask you where to deploy it, availability set, same thing. And we will expose port 80. Chef, again, not needed. And basically, I'm currently deploying a full Drupal installation in only a few clicks. Now, when going back to all items, you see that it is currently showing Devoxx Pass in the bottom as one of my services. So if I click onto it, I'm able to see what the status is. So currently, it's still deploying. So let's see what it's how it's doing. Might be already available. Might still be provisioning. Let's see what Eclipse is saying. It's still doing it. Okay, it's still not ready. All right. So in the meanwhile, I said we were going to look at virtual machines and cloud services. That's what we did from Eclipse. I will show you the power of auto-scaling right away. Now, of course, we still have support for websites. Now, when hosting websites, basically it's really platform as a service. You focus on web application and you deploy them into the cloud, and you would like the platform to manage that completely for you. So when I create a new website, I have to give it a name. I have to select a region, and it will create, basically, again, my name.azurewebsites.net, my entry point to start deploying websites, support for Node.js, PHP, Java, and of course, .NET. And it's already up and running. So I'm already ready to start developing this. And for the people are used to working with build servers and with Git, the most easy way to start deploying into this website is basically go to the dashboard and say, set up deployment from source control. Might be a little bit too small, but it's on the menu on the right. So I set up deployment from source control. It's going to ask me, what do you like to use? Visual Studio Online, our own service running on top of DFS, or I can use GitHub, Dropbox, Bitbucket, many of those. I will use a local Git repository, which I will create on my machine and publish to the cloud. So now it's activating my deployment engine on top of this. And I get a Git URL, which basically is a Git repository created for me onto Azure Websites, which I can push to. So if I go to create a new Git repository, I will git bash. All right. So I can say git clone, and right-click does not work. Paste, and I will call it Devoxx site. So it will ask me for my password, which I hope I still remember. Okay, so it has cloned my repository, which is currently empty. So so basically, when I add a new file here, index.php, and I put some content inside of this file. Oh, that's not good. And we put echo php info, small words, like this. Now, basically, as a developer, my job is done, and I'd like to commit my changes. So I have a new file, which I still need to stage. So I add my file, I commit my index php, and basically now I will be able to push. And since this remote has not been fully configured yet, I first have to specify that I would like to push to the origin, and I would like to push my master branch, because the branch does not exist yet in the cloud. Yes, and my password is always giving me problems. It's writing, and you will immediately see in the full stack of the remote that is basically updating my branch master. It's generating a deployment script. It's running the deployment command, and it's really deploying this index.php into my Azure website without me doing anything. So if we look here, I have an active deployment deployed by me today, adding index.php and automated versioning of my files here. If I navigate to this site, you'll see that it shows me the version of PHP which I'm currently running. Imagine that I make a change, and I say echo, oh, and I publish this. So it's going to deploy this new version. We'll see this happening right here in the portal. And has deployed my hello world. So if I refresh this guy, it shows me hello world. Imagine that I now realize that I made a terrible mistake and I would like to go back to my previous version. I just select this slot and I say redeploy. Yes. And I'm redeploying the exact same version which has been deployed before onto my Azure websites. And if I go back to this site right now, you see that it's back to PHP info. Now, These are great, but of course you need some more support. So if we go back to our dashboard, an extra menu, which you saw here, add a new deployment slot. Of course, everybody deploying websites likes a production slot, but also likes a staging slot. So you can easily add a new deployment slot. Okay, I have to do this. Now, that's the first thing I would like to show you. Now, currently, this website is free. It's in free mode, which means that I'm stuck with the devoxx site.azurewebsites.net. I'm not able to add a custom domain and so. But if you would like to, you can easily start for free. And the moment your website starts building momentum and starts becoming more popular, you easily scale up to a shared instance, which is a more dedicated machine with more power, a basic machine, or even a standard machine. And when you go to standard machine, your website will automatically be migrated to a new virtual machine, which is your machine. So it's your dedicated virtual machine, no other customers running on top of it. And basically, the limit currently is that you cannot host more than 500 websites onto a single virtual machine. Now, if I save this, you'll see that it only takes couple of seconds for this to switch. In the meanwhile, the user still requesting this website will keep going to the current deployment, and all the new requests will go to the new virtual machine. It's already done. If we now go to configure, I'm able to change anything I would like to. I can add custom domain names. I can add SSL support with my own certificate. I can basically change anything which I would like to. So currently this has been deployed, so certificates, domain names, all manageable. Now, if we go back and we add a staging slot, add a new deployment slot, and we call this staging. I clone it from the production guy. Basically, within the same pricing tier, without paying extra, you get a second website, which has, again, a new deployment slot where you can start pushing. It has a dedicated Git repository. It has everything different for you to start deploying to staging. And the moment you would like to go from staging into production, you can easily go into a slot and say, in the bottom, swap, and say, I would like to swap staging to production. And again, on DNS level, it will swap the records. Without downtime, it will make sure that you have a complete release management and thing in place. Now, a new feature which has been added recently, and that's in the new portal. So if you go again to browse and you go to your websites, it should be in the list. And it will allow you to do A/B testing. So imagine that you would like to see which version of your website, the one with the red background or the one with Azure Blue background, is being the best one for your users. You go into your website, you go to the bottom, and you see testing in production. You click testing in production, and you say, I would like to send 20% of traffic to my staging slot, or my B slot, whatever. You save it, and the moment you have done this, it activated A/B testing out of the box, so every user accessing devoxx-site.azurewebsites.net or your custom domain which you configured will automatically, 80% of them will be redirected to your main site, and the others to a new version of your website which you might be testing. And with analytics tools, basically you're able to figure out which one has the most conversion, what site has the highest conversion rate. So with a few clicks, you have A/B testing in place. You also see websites by default has sticky load balancing, which means that if I go to devoxx site, I will always come to my the same website. I'm having some internet problems. Okay, so the moment a user has initiated a session with a single Azure website, it will always come back to the same one. It's only if you have a new session, might end up in 20% to the other machine. So to make sure that you're not switching back and forth between multiple versions. So it's still changing the deployment. That's why it's loading. In the meanwhile, our devoxx pass.azure.cloudera.net is ready. So you see that it has full Tomcat available for me. If I go to the manager app, and I log in with Tomcat, which are the best credentials ever, you'll see that it lists me the applications which I deployed through Eclipse. It's called Devoxx. That was the name I gave my application. And if I navigate to Devoxx, you will see that it shows me Hello Cloud, which is the GSP file which I deployed in the first place. So now I have a full platform as a service thing deployed from Eclipse. And imagine that I would like to go for more control. I drill into cloud services. I go to Devoxx Pass. I go to scale. I can even set to scale it up to, currently I have 350 CPU cores available for me. I can scale it up to 350, or I can even have it configured so that it automatically scales, which I will show you later. So let's see, this was my Ubuntu, this was the Hello Cloud, and okay, I thought I had Drupal. Let's see if the internet is holding up. So the last service which I will show you while these all things are loading is Redis, how easy it is to deploy a Redis cluster. So I say new, and you see this is in the new portal. You see that it has support for search as a service, Redis as a service, and Redis is the Linux-based variant. So I'll choose Redis Cache. It will ask me for some names, so I will call it Devoxx, which has not been taken yet, so it's mine now. I have to specify where it wants to host it. It's not important. Which location I would like it to use, so I choose North Europe. Why it's in Dutch, no clue. And I can choose which pricing tier I would like to use, so I can go from 1 gigabyte cache up to the biggest one is 53 gigabyte cache. So right available from the fingertips. If you start too small and you would like to upscale, it's of course no problem. So I select this guy, and I say create, and basically it's now creating my dedicated Redis as a service, which I can in a few minutes connect to using my standard Redis CLI or Redis console and start playing around with Redis. It's creating the Redis cache. So the other side, devoxx-drupal.cloudera.net, was the image which I deployed with a few clicks, and you see my full Drupal deployment is ready. So it has Drupal and it has MySQL behind the scenes. I can start configuring my Drupal right away without spending time setting up my machines. And this guy is causing, okay. So you see that currently devoxx-site.azure-websites.net says, okay, I have created this website, but I don't know what to do. If I open a new browser, start in private browsing, you see that this is the PHP version, this is my A version, this is my B version. So if I refresh this guy, it will always remain this version. If I refresh this guy, it will always remain this version. So that's A/B testing in place. Now, that's PHP, but imagine that you would like to run Java on these websites. Basically, you go to websites, you go to Devoxx site, you say configure, and then you will see that all the frameworks we are currently supporting on Azure websites are listed here for you to configure. So by default, of course, we support .NET Framework, we support PHP versions 5.4, 5.5, and even your own custom one. Imagine that you would like to do some crazy stuff and the configuration does not suit this guy. Basically, you just upload your own PHP runtime with your own php.ini file. You configure it, whatever plugins you would like to. You upload it, and you can start it, and it's running your own PHP. If I switch to Java 1.7, it asks me, do you would like to run Tomcat, or would you like to run Jetty? I hit save. That's all I have to do. And it will basically switch my website to Java. It's already done. So if I refresh this guy, oh, it's here. This is probably still the staging side. So I need to take, oh, where is it? This guy, no. Need to open new browser, closed it already. Let's hope that I get into the production guy. And it needs to load now because it's switched to Java. So it's and it says this Java-based web application has been successfully created. There's nothing here yet, but start deploying. And to prove that it's indeed running Java, it's basically running Apache Tomcat on this folder on Windows, and it's running Oracle. Currently, the platform as a service, so Cloud Service and Azure websites are running on top of Windows. You have not the option yet to select Linux. Now that was, in the meanwhile, my Redis cache should be being created. Sometimes it takes a while. So we go back here. And I would like to, I still have 7 minutes left to talk a little bit about the DevOps thing. We've seen quite a lot of stuff already, like with Git and deployment and stuff like that. The full story around virtual machines can also be automated, or with Docker, with Chef, with Puppet. You can do it. You can do a full management of all these environments with PowerShell as well. Of course, when I showed you that when you have an Ubuntu machine, that the extensions are basically not offered by Microsoft, but by our partners, and this list will start building. And every time you create a machine, you can easily extend it using the extensions offered by our partners, and it will offer new capabilities like security, Docker in this case, and Chef are the two most known extensions for Ubuntu at this time. Now, I've mentioned a little bit about auto-scaling, so I will go into those details. So if I go to websites, you see that you have a monitor tab, which will show you everything which happens on this website for the past minutes. So it just shows you CPU time, memory usage, disk I/O. It will show you everything like that. If you go to cloud services, and I go back to my DevOps Pass deployment, I can go to scale, and I can say scale on a scheduled time. Imagine that I know that at night I need to have more power or less power. I can schedule it, or I can say no, I would like to do it based on CPU, and I would like the CPU between 60 and 80%, and scale between 1 and 3 instances, and scale up by 2 instances at a time. I can even make it bigger. I should be able to make it bigger. And I can say scale down and up by 1 at a time, which means that if the average CPU usage of my cluster gets higher than 80%, it will automatically add a new instance. If it comes back down under 60%, it will automatically remove one. That's all done by the platform for you, auto-scaling in place, without any third-party tools. Let's see. Okay. That should be it. Yeah, Redis cache is still creating. It will probably keep going. Now, the last thing, and that's the announcement only made yesterday, so it's brand new. Microsoft has decided to open source .NET. So it has made the full server stack open source, available on GitHub for anybody who wants to contribute. You can clone your own version, you can fork it, you can do whatever you want. If you would like to change something, you can send pull requests. So it means .NET compiler, .NET runtime, the ASP.NET, and full support for Mac and Linux. So currently the question we get is, okay, does it mean that I can run Visual Studio on Linux or Mac? No, it runs only on Windows, but the next step after this became open source will be that there will be IDEs and tools available which allow you to build native .NET applications using Mac and Linux. Now, if you're an open source developer, you have, or a non-enterprise developer, you had the Visual Studio Express editions already for quite some time. Since yesterday, we released the Visual Studio Community Edition, which is fully free for companies under 250 users, and which you cannot use for commercial purposes. But if you're an open source developer or would like to contribute to .NET or any other open source library, you can have it for free. And it's basically the full professional edition with all the features available right for you. And also since yesterday, they announced a partnership with Xamarin and with Cordova for PhoneGap, so that you can have full support of those two hybrid platforms into Visual Studio as well to start building cross-platform applications. Now, if you're interested in more, there are quite a lot of resources available. My colleagues and I will be at the booth, so we're giving away 10 of these guys. We are giving away passes, which you can use to try Azure for 30 days. If you have other questions or you would like to see a demo of other scenarios, please hop by and ask me to show you more. The announcements on .NET, like the open source thingy, the new version of Visual Studio, and all that motion on GitHub is published on our MSDN Belux blog. So you can always follow there. And don't forget, if you try Azure for 30 days, basically you get 150 euros for free to be used in Azure on any service you would like. Websites, virtual machine, cloud service, everything which I showed today, you can do with that free pass for 30 days. So that was basically my story. I still have 2 minutes left for questions. Anyone? Okay. Then thanks for joining this talk. I hope it was interesting. Ah, somebody? Ah, you have a question?
At the moment, you don't support distributed transactions for the service bus, for Java, only for .NET.
Okay.
Go in that direction?
I don't know.
It's a big
Sorry, I will repeat the question. So the question was that we don't support distributed transaction for service bus using Java. That's really a specific question. If you really would like an answer, I don't have it right now. Come to me at the booth. We'll write down your contact details. I will request the team who is building it. Specifically, it's another team building the Java components. I will ask them feedback about it, and I will let you know. All right, thanks. Enjoy the rest of the day.